here with Tony Silva today. Tony, thank you for interviewing with Security Interviews.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you could make it. So Tony, we're in Las Vegas, and you've been here for quite a while now.
10 years now?
Let's go all the way back to the very beginning though. How did you first get involved in security in the first place?
Quite by accident, actually. I was a police explorer in Orange County, California, and one of the captains had a good friend that owned a security company, and I was going to turn 18 years old, just graduated from high school, and he gave me a good reference, and I got a job for the summer, and it just morphed into something else. I went to college and continued in the security industry, and eventually got into the police department. And after leaving the police department, I did a myriad of things related to security, and it's been a great adventure.
So while you were in the police department, we talked earlier, a little bit earlier at lunch, that you actually were a SWAT member and then got into hostage negotiations, which sounds very, very interesting. How many jobs did you hold in progressively through that?
Primarily, once I graduated the academy, I went into patrol, and I was a new face. Nobody really knew me in the city that I worked in LA County, so I got to work some undercover details, warrant details, and it was very interesting. And I love law enforcement. And one thing led to another, and then I just was asked to join different parts of the teams and gather experience. And from there, just a stepping stone. It just made a natural progression into security after I left the police department.
And so when you went from the public side to the private side, some people have a hard time making that transition. It sounds like you made that transition pretty easily and got into something you really enjoyed.
I've always been a people person, right. and I really, I think even now to this very day, I think anybody will tell you that it's all relationships.
Yes.
We have, you have online media and social media, but still it's the shaking of the hand, knowing people. So I basically have the ability to kind of put myself in the client's position, see what they need, and then adjust my personality, if you will. I need to be stern or whatever it may be to fit the occasion. So I was able to go ahead and see what was needed, and I was able to make that position my own and trust and basically gathering as much knowledge as I could about a position and then going from there.
So you went from the public side to the private side in the executive protection, right? Did you go right into Gucci or?
No, I started coordinating security, location security for the movie studios.
Oh, interesting.
So I got to work on several well-known movies and television shows, and once again, the networking is a big part of my life because somebody had called and say, hey, I need somebody to do this. Do you know anything? Oh, yeah, I can do that. And I just moved up to staff.
You get to bring some of those things you learned as an officer into those movies and help them.
Well, I think anybody who's worked as a police officer, you really you take every situation and as you're rolling to a call, red lights and siren, you're basically putting you're putting a perimeter around an emergency situation. There's procedures you follow, you learn in the academy, and then once you get in the street, there's policies and procedures, and then basically the way your partners, your fellow colleagues work. So you put everything together and you just make that situation work. You try to control as much as possible. You can't control what's happening, you can control how you respond to a certain given situation, training and policies.
So then you went to work for Gucci, which is a very large company with a lot of moving parts.
Actually, again, networking. I received a phone call from a very good friend of mine, and there was a consulting job that came up, and he asked me if I would be interested. It was supposed to be probably a 45-day operation, and I went in there, and gosh, before the 45 days was over, the chairman of the company asked me if I was interested in sticking around, and he offered me a position, and that turned into a 16-and-a-half-year relationship with Gucci Timepieces. And eventually, at first I oversaw the personal security division, the executive protection and family and such, and then later on I oversaw security for the entire company. So I had kind of a dual role.
So Gucci is one of those iconic companies that makes a lot of products, and then you have some third world countries that are making fakes, basically.
Exactly.
And I could see that being a very difficult thing for a security manager to take.
Well, absolutely. Knockoffs and counterfeit products, and even nowadays, you got counterfeit medications. It runs the gamut. Back in the day, this was Gucci timepieces, so we were always, within 60 days of a new model coming out, it was already duplicated and counterfeited
Is that
on the
amazing?
market. So it was always a cat and mouse game, and part of my job was to go ahead and find locations where these were coming in and work with our attorneys and patent attorneys to go ahead and close down operations like that. But it's an ongoing problem. It will never go away. And people, as long as there's a market for it, there'll be counterfeit items out there.
The supply chain, just trying to deal with a company that size and all these, excuse the pun, moving parts for watches.
Swiss moving parts.
Swiss
Yes.
moving parts. How did you deal with that risk environment?
The chairman of our company was really ahead of his time. He started with a barcode system a long time ago, so whenever parts were pulled for a timepiece, it was already in the computer. If a retailer sold a model, parts were automatically pulled to have another duplicate item made and to take its place. So that, coupled with not having a lot of inventory and then having strict checks and balance system in their supply chain was very, very important. There was an incident that occurred in the UK where our secured transportation armored car, if you will, was looted and there was a large shipment missing. And we were able to pinpoint where in this whole transportation network it occurred because our policies and procedures within our company were so strict and that we could pinpoint it and found out there was an inside job with the contractor that was hired to transport the goods. So
Usually is an inside job.
and typically, when you look at and peel back everything, if you have a good security program with different policies and procedures and protocol in place, it'll typically.
Did you go straight from Gucci right into working in the casino industry?
Well, I was actually recruited. My primary discipline was executive protection. I really enjoyed that. But at Gucci, I was able to expand and go worldwide with the security, corporate security discipline. And I really enjoyed that. So when I was recruited to come to Las Vegas and to start the executive protection division for a large gaming company, I primarily did that, and it was basically the chairman, and then eventually morphed into the top 13 level executives, and then eventually that morphed into vice president of enterprise security.
And we're going to call it a large casino enterprise then.
Yes.
How many casinos were in that large?
54.
54.
6 countries.
And some of those were very, very well-known names, and I would assume that probably tens of thousands of cameras.
Oh, easily. And there's two different types. There's gaming, surveillance, and non-gaming, and they're separate and very qualified and experienced people. It's just amazing what you learn and what you can see.
Is it true that somebody once told me that they could actually, see the ink on the cards vividly?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, depending on the table games especially, those cameras are so dialed in that you're able to see the denominations of the money and the cards exactly. And if you notice when you go into a gaming facility, the cameras are strategically placed so we're able to watch the customer as well as our employees.
What did you find is your largest challenge in running an organization like that?
The biggest challenge, is that because we're a free society, we're hotels and we're gaming, people come to Las Vegas and they spend their money, they have a great time, the dining experience, the hotel, the gaming, everything. So exterior things that we don't control, like basically the political climate or things that are happening in the world today, we have to put processes and procedures that are basically seamless to the customer, but we're able to provide top level security for our customers as well as our employees and our brand. It's very, very important that we maintain that brand.
How many officers do you have working at any one time?
Well, it depends on the property, but typically enterprise, you have over 4,000 security personnel, dedicated men and women that work hard every day to provide the level of service that's unsurpassed in this industry.
You talked earlier about some of those logistics, like having different uniforms for all these different places in the world where you have this real estate. And I would think that it would be logistics would become such a pivotal part of the overall management of all of these locations.
True. Most of the security function reports up to the general manager of the property, and then each property has really its own personality. You walk into a place and it has its own vibe, you feel it. So a lot of what happens in the casino, on the floor, or on the property as a whole is dictated by the personality and the type of customer that they cater to.
Because every property is different.
Every property is different. Whether it be regionally, if it's an Indian tribal operation, or it's one that's on the East Coast or West Coast, each property has its own distinctive personality.
What would you say to a student that was in college or university in either security management or in looking at law enforcement as a career? What would you say to that person from looking back?
Well, I enjoyed law enforcement, but I also, the security career was an excellent choice for me. It's the luxury to travel around the world. I've been to every continent with the exception of Antarctica.
They have casinos there?
No, not this point. But I'll tell you that it's afforded me the luxury to meet some heads of state and celebrities, and I've seen some beautiful countries inside and met some phenomenal people. And so the security industry has been very good to me, and I've raised a family, and I love it. I just absolutely love it. So I think somebody that's going into security, and I had the luxury of going into law enforcement first. I enjoyed that, but security really allowed me to make the industry my own. I could pick a certain niche of the industry and then make it my own and expand on that. So they have the opportunity, especially nowadays, if they can leverage technology. There's biometrics, there's surveillance, cameras are just ahead of their time. So many different things that they can look at and try different things. If you're young enough, try every discipline. I started out in contract security, checking in tomatoes at a ketchup factory. I worked in corporate offices and eventually to the senior security executive for a large company. So, you just work up and decide what you want to do, make those goals, and move forward.
Okay. Tony, thank you very much for taking the
time.
time.
Appreciate it.
This has been Security Interviews. We're in Las Vegas.